My dear friends, masters and gods, a very good evening to you all. Mahavatar TV warmly welcomes you to the 21 days free holistic wellness program, batch 20, day 18. So before commencing the session, I would like to say pranams to you all and to our Guruji Ranganath sir and our Grandmaster Maharshi Patriji and to the great Grandmaster Mahavatar Babaji and to all the great Grandmasters and to the universe. So today's topic is spiritual life and religious life by our senior master B. Payaniappan sir. So brief introduction about Payaniappan sir. Sir holds an B in civil engineering and ME in structural engineering. So sir is a retired chief engineer of the Public Works Department, Government of Puducherry. Sir also served as an executive engineer with ESI Corporation, where he was responsible for construction of ESI hospitals across Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Puducherry. So over his distinguished career, Sir has served for a total 38 years in both central government and state government of Puducherry combined. So Sir began his spiritual journey in the year 2008 through the teachings of Grandmaster Maharshi Patriji and visited the Pyramid Valley International in Bangalore in the same year. So a dedicated leader for more than 30 years, he has deepened his spiritual practice in recent times. So for the past 6 months, he has been attending English meditation sessions conducted by the Mahavatar Foundation, whereas he has been practicing Anapanasati meditation and gaining profound spiritual insights. So in addition to his personal practice, Sir is actively involved in spiritual service, spreading the message of meditation. So he has been hosting Tamil session for the last 1 month. So his life mission is to continue meditation and spiritual service until his last breath. So this is a brief introduction about Payaniappan sir. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Master Lokesh sir. Good evening, my dear friends. First, I tell my pranams to Ascended Master Mahavatar Babaji and our great Master Brahmarishi Thiru Patriji Avargal, our great Master spiritual, our Mahavatar Foundation founder, Thiru Ranganathan sir, Avargal, and my pranams to all masters and participants now. My pranams to the universe. Now, I thank Mr. Lokesh sir for giving me a brief introduction. Thank you, sir. Now, I will proceed with my topic. What is the spiritual life and religious life? First of all, the life of human creature as it is ordinarily lived is composed of fixed, fluid mass of very imperfectly ruled thoughts, perceptions, sensations, emotions, desires, enjoyments, acts mostly customary and self-repeating, in part only dynamic and self-developing, but all centered around a superficial ego. The ordinary life consists in work for personal aim and satisfaction of desire under some mental or moral control, touched sometimes by a mental ideal. Morality is a part of the ordinary life. It is an attempt to govern the outward conduct by certain mental rules or to form the character by these rules in the image of a certain mental ideal. This is about ordinary life, routine life. Now, the religious life is a movement of the same ignorant human consciousness, turning or trying to turn away from the earth towards the divine. But as yet without knowledge and led by the dogmatic tenets and rules of some sect or creed which claims to have found the way out of the bonds of the earth consciousness into some beatific beyond. The religious life may be the first approach to the spiritual, but very often it is only a turning about in a round of rites, ceremonies, and practices or set ideas and forms without any issue. In terms of Hindu thought, it is to enthrone the rule of the purified and sattvic buddhi, following the dharma, fulfilling one's own swadharma and doing the work proper to one's capacities and satisfy kama and artha under the control of buddhi and dharma. This ideal involves the building of mind character and is always a slow and difficult process demanding patient labor of years, sometimes the better part of lifetime. All standards and rules are temporary concessions founded upon the needs of the ego in its transition from matter to spirit. These makeshifts have a relative imperativeness so long as we rest satisfied in the stages of transition, content with the physical and vital life attached to the mental movement. But beyond is the unwalled wideness of a supermental infinite consciousness, and that all temporary success cease. And this much I added about ordinary life and religious life. Now we go for the spiritual life. What is spirituality? The spiritual man is one who has realized something of it, even if only in one aspect out of many. One who is striving after it is the spiritual seeker. All else, however, magnificently intellectual, ethical, aesthetically beautiful, and harmonious, vitally splendid, great, and forceful, or physically perfect is a valuable achievement on the way, but not yet that, for one has not passed the Rubicon of mind into a new empire. Owing to the nature of the fast evolution of consciousness and of spirituality itself, there has been much confusion on this point, and there is still more today because of the present domination of the Western ideal. On one side or another, mental idealism, ethical development, altruistic character and action, religious piety and fervor, occult powers, feats of aesthetic endurance have been put forward as the essence of spirituality. It is ignored that any of these things may be there, and yet there need not be any spiritual life behind it. To earn for the family and carry out our social and domestic duties, to be a good man, a perfect citizen, patriot, worker for the community, to serve mankind are the real things far more spiritual than to sit in the meditation, seeking for some remote and invisible transcendental reality. True selflessness lies there to sacrifice or offer one's life to the good of others, to the community, to the race, to seek one's own inner spiritual growth, to draw back from ordinary life in order to reach something beyond, to search after the divine above humanity is mere egoism, not true spirituality. To arrive at the spirituality that can come only by a change of consciousness, a reversal of consciousness, a new basis of consciousness, which is not lesser instrumental consciousness of mind, life, and body. At each step of evolution, we have this change, reversal, new base. Matter is based on an involved consciousness, which is in practice an inconsistency. Life in the plant on a still involved consciousness, struggling for growth, expansion, persistence, seeking after movement, sensation, and conscious living without yet reaching them. Life in the animal on a vital consciousness, possess of these things, already emotional, possess of a mind, but a mind still involved in life movement, not reflective, not subjective, and turning upon life to understand, master, and control it. Mind is based on a consciousness that has allowed this emergence, this reflective and controlling power, this growing understanding, mastery, self-awareness. But mind is still aware only of life and of itself. It is not aware of the person, the reality behind, the user of the instrument. It is seeking for these things, and it is this search that constitutes the drive for a new evolution. For mind is a twilight preparing for light, and ignorance seeking after knowledge, a bondage to nature, groping after freedom and mastery over nature. It is not on mind, on its not modifying ignorance and bondage, and even on its off light, of mastery, of knowledge, that the next step can base itself. It must base itself on the soul consciousness, consciousness of the spirit and self. For so only can there evolve the full light, the spontaneous mastery, the intimate and real knowledge. The way to spiritual life. If we have a sincere aspiration to the spiritual change in our heart and soul, then we will find the way and the guide. A mere mental seeking and questioning are not enough to open the doors of the spirit. The means towards the supreme end is a self-giving of all our nature to the divine. Everything must be given to the divine within us, to the universal all, and to the transcendent supreme. An absolute concentration of our will, our heart, and our thought on that one and manifold divine, and an unreserved self consecration of our whole being to the divine alone. This is the decisive movement, the turning of the ego to that which infinitely greater than itself giving an indispensable surrender. At one moment, we must plunge without hesitation, reserve or fear or skulk into the ocean of the free, the infinite, the absolute. After the law, liberty, after the personal, after the general, after the universal standards, there is something greater. The impersonal plasticity, the divine freedom, the transcendental force, and the supernal impulse. After the straight path of the ascent, the white plateaus on the summit. There are three stages of the ascent. At the bottom, the bodily life ensolved to the presence of pressure of necessity and desire. In the middle, the mental, the higher emotional and psychic rule that feels after great interest, aspiration, experiences, ideas, and at the summit, first a deeper psyche and spiritual state, and then a supramental eternal consciousness in which all aspirations and seekings discover their own intimate significance. In the spiritual life, or when a higher power than mind has manifested and taken possession of the nature, these limited motive forces recede, dwindle, tend to disappear. The spiritual or supramental self The divine, being the supreme and immanent reality, must be alone the Lord within us and shape freely our final development, ascending to the highest, widest, most integral expression possible of the law of our nature. In the end, that nature acts in the perfect truth and its spontaneous freedom, for it obeys only the luminous power of the eternal. The individual has nothing further to gain, no desire to fulfill. He will become a portion of the impersonality or the universal personality of the eternal. No other object than the manifestation and play of the divine spirit in life and the maintenance and conduct of the world in its march towards the divine goal can move him to action. Mental ideas, opinions, concessions are is no more, for his mind has fallen into silence. It is only a channel for the light and truth of the divine knowledge. Ideals are too narrow for the vastness of his spirit. It is the ocean of the infinite that flows through him and moves him forever. Next, there are some do's and don'ts in spiritual life. There must be no attachment to any form of things or life or of life, any object, any activity. All must be renounced if need be. All must be admitted that the divine chooses as his material for the divine life. But what accepts or rejects must be neither mind nor open or camouflaged vital will of desire nor ethical sense, but the insistence of the psych being, the command of the divine guide, the vision of the higher self or spirit, the illumined guidance of the master. The way of the spirit is not a mental way, a mental rule or mental consciousness cannot be its determinant or its leader. Then one must reject all that comes from the ego, from vital desire, from the mere mind and its presumptuous reasoning incompetence. All that ministers to these agents of the ignorance. One must learn to hear and follow the voice of the inmost soul, the direction of the Guru, the command of the Master, the working of the Divine Mother. Whoever clings to the desires and weaknesses of the flesh, the cravings and passions of the vital in his turbulent ignorance, the dictates of his personal mind, unsilenced and unillumined by a greater knowledge, cannot find the true inner law and its heaping obstacles in the way of the divine fulfillment. Whoever is able to detect and denounce those obscuring agencies and to discern and follow the true guide within and without will discover the spiritual law and reach the goal. Our confused and embarrassed, ego-centered, small motivated will and action must cease and make room for the total working of swiftly powerful, lucidly automatic, divinely moved and guided force that must be implanted and activized in all our doings, a supreme, impersonal, unfaltering, and unstumbling will in spontaneous and untroubled unison with the will of the God. The unsatisfying surface play of our feeble egoistic emotions must be ousted and there must be revealed instead a secret deep and vast psychic heart within that waits behind them for its hour. Now we will see how to awaken the inner divine compulsion. For the perfectly spiritualized society will be one in which, as is deemed by the spiritual anarchist, all men will be deeply free and it will be so because the preliminary condition will have been satisfied. In that state, each man will be not a law to himself, but the law, the divine law, because he will be a soul living in the divine and not an ego living mainly, if not entirely, for his own interest and purpose. His life will be led by the law of his own divine nature, liberated from the ego. So, those who are enslaved to the old religious formulas cannot believe in the acceptance and transformations of life by the Spirit. But all who are free in mind and heart to accept a completer truth and labor for a greater ideal. They must be men who will dedicate themselves not to the past or the present but to the future. They will need to consecrate their lives to an exceeding of their lower self, to the realization of God in themselves and in all human beings, and to a whole-minded and indefatigable labor for the nation and for humanity. This ideal can be as yet only a little seed, and the life that embodies it a small nucleus, but it is our fixed hope that the seed will grow into a great tree and the nucleus be the heart of an ever-extending formation. It is with a confident trust in the Spirit that inspires us that we take our place among the standard bearers of the new humanity that is struggling to be born among the chaos of a world in dissolution. One thing essential must take precedence: the conversion of the whole life of the human being to the lead of the Spirit. The ascent of man into heaven is not the key, but rather his ascent here into the Spirit and the descent also of the Spirit into his normal humanity and the transformations of this earthly nature. For that and not some postmortem salvation is the real new birth for which humanity waits as the crowning moment of long, obscure, and painful course. Therefore, individuals who will most help the future of humanity in the new age will be those who will recognize a spiritual evolution as the destiny and therefore the great need of human being. They will especially not make the mistake of thinking that the change can be affected by machinery and outward institutions. They will know and never forget that it has to be lived out by each man inwardly, or it can never be made a reality for the kind. The thing to be done is as large as human life, and therefore the individuals who lead the way will take all human life for their province. Those pioneers will consider nothing as alien to them, nothing as outside their scope. For every part of human life has to be taken up by the spiritual, not only the intellectual, the aesthetic, the ethical, but the dynamic, the vital, the physical. Therefore, for none of these things or the activities that spring from them will they have contempt or aversion. However, they may insist on a change of the spirit and the transmutation of the form. In each power of our nature, they will seek for its own proper means of conversion, knowing that the divine is concealed in all. They will hold that all can be made the spirit's means of self-finding, and all can be converted into its instruments of divine living. All would change if man could once consent to be spiritualized. But its nature, mental and vital physical, is rebellious to the higher law. The spirit is the truth of our being, mind, and life and body in their imperfection are its masks, but in their perfection should be its molds. To be spiritual only is not enough. That prepares a number of souls for heaven, but leaves the earth very much where it was. Neither is a compromise the way of salvation. The world knows three kinds of revolution. The material has strong results, the moral and the intellectual are infinitely larger in their scope and richer in their tools. But the spiritual are the great sowings. Each religion has helped mankind. Paganism increased in the man light of beauty, the largeness and the height of his life. His aim at a many-sided perfection. Christianity gave his him Christianity gave him some vision of divine love and charity. Buddhism has shown him a noble way to be wiser, gentle, purer. Judaism and Islam showed how to be religiously faithful in action and zealously devoted to God. Hinduism has opened the largest and profoundest spiritual possibilities. A great thing would be done if all these God visions could embrace and cast themselves into each other. But intellectual dogma and cult egoism stand in the way. All religions have saved a number of souls, but none yet has been able to spiritualize mankind. For that, there is needed not cult and creed, but a sustained and all comprehending effort at the spiritual self evolution. The changes we see in the world today are intellectual, moral, physical in their ideal and intention. The spiritual evolution waits for its hour and throws up meanwhile its waves here and there. Until it comes, the sense of others cannot be understood. Until then, all interpretations of present happening and forecast of man's future are vain things. For his nature, power, event are that which will determine the next cycle of our humanity. So, only a spiritual change and evolution of his being from the superficial mental towards the deeper spiritual consciousness can make a real and effective difference. To discover the spiritual being in himself is the main business of the spiritual man, and to help others towards the same evolution in his real service to the race. It is by understanding himself by learning to know himself, that one can make the supreme discovery and cry out in wonder like the patriarch in the Bible, the house of God is here, and I knew it not. That's why we must express that sublime thought, creatrix of the material worlds, and make known to all the world that fulfills the heavens and the earth. I am in all things and all beings. Now we shall understand the vanity and childishness of our meager satisfactions, our quarrels, our petty passions, our blind indignations. We shall see the dissolution of our little faults, the crumbling of the last entrenchments of our limited personality and our obtuse egoism. We shall feel ourselves being swept along by this sublime current of true spirituality, which will deliver us from our narrow limits and bounds. The individual self and the universal self are one in every world, in every being, in everything, in every atom of the divine presence. And man's mission is to manifest it. In order to do that, he must become conscious of his divine presence within him. Some individuals must undergo a real apprenticeship in order to achieve this. Their egoistic being is too all-absorbing, too rigid, too conservative, and their struggles against it are long and painful. Others are the contrary, who are more impersonal, more spiritualized, come easily into contact with the inexhaustible divine source of their being. And we should not forget that they too should devote themselves to daily, constantly, to a methodical effort of adaptation and transformation so that nothing within them may ever again obscure the radiance of that pure light. But how greatly the standpoint changes once we attain this deeper consciousness, how understanding widens, how compassion grows. To lead a spiritual life, we can create our atmosphere by controlling our thoughts, turning them exclusively towards the sadhana, controlling our actions, turning them exclusively towards the sadhana, abolishing all desires and all useless external ordinary activities, living a more intense inner life and separating ourselves from ordinary things, ordinary thoughts, ordinary reactions, ordinary actions, then we create a kind of atmosphere around us. For example, instead of reading any odd thing and chatting and doing anything, whatever, if we read only what helps us to follow the path, if we act only in conformity with what can lead us to the divine realization, if we abolish in ourselves all desires and impulses turned towards external things, if we calm our mental being, appease our vital being, if we shut ourselves against suggestions coming from outside and become immune to the action of people surrounding us, we create such a spiritual atmosphere that nothing can touch it and it no longer depends at all on the circumstances or on whom we live with or on the conditions we live in because we are enclosed in our own spiritual atmosphere. And that is how we obtain it by turning our attention solely to the spiritual life, by reading only what can help in the spiritual life, by doing only what leads us to the spiritual life, and so on. Then we create our own atmosphere. But naturally, if we open all the doors, listen to what people tell us, follow the advice of this one and the inspirations of that one, and are full of desires for outside things, we cannot create a spiritual atmosphere for ourselves. We will have an ordinary atmosphere like everybody else. The number of hours spent in meditation is no proof of spiritual progress. It is a proof of our progress when we no longer have to make an effort to meditate. Then we have rather to make an effort to stop meditating. It becomes difficult to stop meditation, difficult to stop thinking of the divine, difficult to come down to the ordinary consciousness. Then we are sure of progress. Then we have made real progress when concentration in the divine is the necessity of our life. When we cannot do without it, when it continues naturally from morning to night, what we may be engaged in doing, what we sit down to meditation or go about and do things and work, what is required of us is consciousness. That is the one need by to be consciously consciousness of the divine. The true spiritual life begins when one is in communion with the divine in the psyche. When one is conscious of the divine presence in the psyche and is constant communion with the psyche, then the spiritual life begins not before the true spiritual life. When one is united with one's psyche being and conscious of the divine presence and receives impulses for one action from this divine presence, and when the will has become a conscious collaborator with the divine will. That is the starting point. Before that, one may be an aspirant to the spiritual life, but one doesn't have a spiritual life. Further, one can concentrate in any of the three centers which is easiest to the sadak or gives most result. The power of concentration in the heart center is to open the center, and by the power of aspiration, love, bhakti, surrender, remove the veil which covers and conceals the soul and bring forward the soul or sight being to govern the mind, life, and body, and turn and open them all fully to the divine, removing all that is opposed to the turning and opening. This is what is called in this yoga the psych transformation. The power of concentration above the head is to bring peace, silence, liberation from the body sense. The identification with mind and life and open the way for the lower, that is mental, vital, physical consciousness to rise up to meet the higher consciousness above and for the powers of higher spiritual nature. Consciousness to descend into mind, life, and body. This is what is called in this yoga the spiritual transformation. Now we will see about the spiritual rebirth. Spiritual rebirth is the constant throwing away of our previous associations and circumstances and proceeding to life. Sir, another 5 minutes I can take, sir. Sir, another 5 minutes.
Sir, yes. Yeah.
Spiritual rebirth is a constant throwing away of our previous associations and circumstances and proceeding to live as if at each virgin moment we were starting life anew. If it is to be free of what is called karma, the stream of our past actions, in other words, a liberation from the bondage of nature's common activity of cause and effect. When this cutting away of the past is triumphantly accomplished in the consciousness, all those mistakes, blunders, errors, and follies which still vivid in our recollection cling to us like leeches sucking our lifeblood drop away, leaving us more joyfully free. This freedom is not a mere matter of thought, it is the most solid, practical, material fact. We are really, we really are free, nothing binds us, nothing affects us. There is no obsession of responsibility. If we want to counteract, annual, or outgrow our past, we cannot do it by mere repentance or similar things. We must forget that the untransformed past has ever been and enter into an enlightened state of consciousness which breaks those from all moorings. To be reborn means to enter into our psych consciousness where we are one with the divine and eternally free from the reactions of karma. Without being aware of the psych, it is not possible to do so. But once we are securely conscious of the true soul in us, which is always surrendered to the divine, all bondages ceases. Then incessantly light begins afresh, then the past no longer cleaves to us. To give an idea of the final height of spiritual rebirth, we can say that there can be a constant experience of the whole universe actually disappearing at the every instant and, and being at the every instant newly created. The psyche is immortal, and it is through the psyche that immortality can be manifested on earth. So the important thing now is to find one psyche, unite with it, and allow it to replace the ego, which will be compelled either to get converted or disappear. To live the spiritual life, a reversal of consciousness is needed. When the reversal of the being has taken place, all that is finished. One no longer seeks, one sees, one no longer deduces, one knows, One no longer gropes, one walks straight to the goal. And when one has gone farther, only a little farther, one knows, feels, lives the supreme truth that the supreme truth alone acts, the supreme Lord alone wills. One knows and does through human beings. So the spiritual life goes beyond the mind. It enters into the deeper consciousness of the spirit and acts out of the truth of the spirit. Yes, sir. This much I want to speak of the about the spiritual life and religious life. Uh, I thank our great master Thiru Ranganathan sir for giving me this opportunity. I thank everyone for patiently hearing the topic. Thank everyone. I thank the universe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your wonderful session on spiritual and religious life. So the inner thing and the outer thing. So any masters want to respond, you can raise your hand. Or want to add anything, you can raise your hand. You can write your query on chat box also. Yes. Yeah. All masters are good, I think. So we'll go for meditation. Masters, let's do Anapanasati meditation. So it is a 2500 years old Buddhist meditation technique that focuses on mindful breathing to cultivate concentration, calm, and insight. So Ana is in breath, Apana is out breath. Sati means to be with the breath. So create a calm environment around you. Just remove your spectacles if you are wearing them, keep them aside. Drink a glass of water before you start meditating. So keep another glass of water beside you so that you can have after the meditation. So dim or darken the lights in your room. It creates a peaceful atmosphere. So switch off the lights. Sit comfortably in a sukhasana on a mat or on the floor. So if you can't sit on the floor, you can sit on chair with your legs crossed like this. Your legs crossed legs like this. Keep your back straight and relaxed. Keep your hands clasped, interlocking fingers up and hand with the other like this. Just place them on your thighs. The hand position is on your thighs. So close your eyes. Gently close your eyes to minimize distractions. So just focus on your breath. Inhale, exhale. Inhale and exhale. So be present with each breath. Simply observe the natural rhythm of your breath without attempting to control it. Focus is not controlling the breath, but to observe it with mindfulness. So you may get thoughts, just ignore it and come back to the breath. Cut the thoughts and come back to the breath. You may get feeling, sensation, whatever. Just ignore it and come back to the breath. Just focus on your breath. Focus on your breath with mindfulness. So be patient and kind to yourself. So as you bring your mind back again and again to focus on breathing, I'll play calming music. It helps you focus and relax. Masters, the last one minute. Bring it and let's bring attention back to the conscious. And we count down 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Gently rub your hands together, generating normal energy. When you are ready, place your palms over your eyes for 5 more seconds. Feel the sleeping present. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Open your eyes, masters. We have completed beautiful meditation, masters. Well done. Let's thank Universe and Mahavatar Foundation for giving us this platform to learn wisdom from many masters. And let's thank all the masters who have attended the session. Thank you all. So please don't miss the session tomorrow. There will be topic called Role of Negative Words. It is a continuous series. There will be the next part tomorrow by Master Agnihotra. See you all tomorrow. Good night.